What you said is right, but also wrong. General Qin smiled. There's no way to research the origins of great ruins. However, when we founded Eternal Peace Empire back then, we received an oracle. In the oracle, it stated that Great Ruins was a land abandoned by gods and wanted the people abandoned by gods to remain in Great Ruins and never come out. If any abandoned people came out, they were to be killed no matter what. From what I heard, other than Eternal Peace Empire, many other countries had also received similar oracles. However, there are not only aboriginals of Great Ruins living here, there are also vicious people who had no place left to go hiding inside Great Ruins. From what I see, these people are even more dangerous than the abandoned people. Seventh young master asked curiously, I saw merchants entering Great Ruins at the border station. Why does Eternal Peace Empire have to do business with the abandoned people of Great Ruins? Young master may not know this, but even though Great Ruins might be barren, their natural resources are plentiful. There are countless rare materials, precious treasure, and valuable beast skins that can be exchanged with worthless items like seasonings. Why would we be against it? General Qin continued, with the mutual exchange of assistance with Great Ruins at the border station, I don't even know how much we earned over these years. Using this money to supplement military use, it allows our Eternal Peace Empire to have a well-trained and powerful army that far surpasses other countries. Seventh young master asked again, what if there are abandoned people who try to sneak through the border? Wouldn't that be bad? Along with the oracle back then, there were also a few treasures. They were called inspection mirrors and were hanged on top of the mountain passes leading to Eternal Peace Empire. As long as they are abandoned people of the Great Ruins, they would be shown upon by the inspection mirrors. Imperial Preceptor guessed that the abandoned people might have a different lineage from us, but he couldn't find anything different even after checking through their bodies. General Qin smiled. Every year, the few mountain passes would capture many of the devil people who are trying to escape to our Eternal Peace Empire. Some of them were executed on the spot while others were brought to mine ores. It would be considered lucky for them to survive 1 to 2 years. The ship gradually sailed away. On the cliff, Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration, that person was very powerful. His eyesight was extremely strong. It's no wonder he could become a general at such a young age. He's trying to draft the topographic map of Surging River. Could it be that the Eternal Peace Empire is moving their army into the Great Ruins? He was slightly puzzled. The Great Ruins was clearly a barren land filled with danger everywhere. Even after the sun sets, there would be the invasion of the darkness. He didn't think that it was a good idea for Eternal Peace Empire to move their army into the Great Ruins. If the army of the Eternal Peace Empire that comes was too small, it wouldn't be enough to stuff the gap between the strange beast's teeth. If it was too big, where would they hide when night falls? It was because there was simply too much danger in the Great Ruins, which was why no one was able to rule the Great Ruins. Not even Eternal Peace Empire. If Eternal Peace Empire was to invade, they would take a hard fall. Suddenly, Qin Mu remembered something and immediately requested, Big fella, go back to Doom's Suppression Palace immediately and destroy the map of the Great Ruins. Devil Ape rose and grabbed onto Dragon Elephant. With a roar, it jumped onto Dragon Elephant and sprinted away. Since the Eternal Peace Empire is starting to draw the topographic map of Surging River, it would help them even more if they were to find the map in the Doom Suppression Palace. Qin Mu had an unsettled expression as he thought to himself. It may be a pity to destroy the map, but he had already memorized the Great Ruins map deep in his mind and would never forget it. Not long later, the river water suddenly became faintly red. Qin Mu was stumped as he looked upstream only to see the water becoming even redder. Young master, there are corpses in the river. Hu Linger cried out in astonishment. Qin Mu also saw the bodies, but he didn't say anything. Looking upstream, more and more bodies floated down. There were huge fish and river beasts under the water as they churned up the water while taking the chance to eat these corpses, creating quite a commotion in the process. Opening his heaven's eyes, Qin Mu saw the faces that were floating up and down in the water, which made his body tremble. These corpses were the very same visitors that had hurried past Jade Cloud Valley just now. With the churning river, the blood red became even more intense. Even the floating ice was dyed red. This wasn't what 100 corpses could do. Surging River was very wide, with a width of 3 miles. With the rapid currents, the blood of 100 people wouldn't be able to dye the river red. Qin Mu's expression froze as he saw the tide of corpses that flowed down from upstream. It's not just a tide of corpses, it was thousands of corpses being mixed with pieces of floating ice which formed an ice tide of corpses. These people were the strong practitioners who were waiting to ambush the general. There was a huge amount of them, separated into batches, heading upstream and setting up a formation to ambush him. Yet they were all killed by the general. To form an ice tide of corpses meant that these people had all died at the same time. They had all died at the same time under the hands of the general or the strong practitioners on the ship. Qin Mu composed himself. It was still the first time he had seen such a gruesome sight. It was even much gruesome than the massacre of the village he had seen when he followed Granny C to deliver a baby when he was young. Back then, his soul was frightened out of his body and was caught back by Granny C. Now, despite being a martial arts practitioner, his soul still wavered upon seeing such a sight. Too cruel. If a small general of Eternal Peace Empire could be so strong and ruthless, how great would the impact be on these savage lands if the armored cavalry of Eternal Peace Empire entered the Great Ruins? Qin Mu shook his head and chased away his uneasiness. He then turned to Hu Linger and warned, "Don't go out to drink these few days. Tell your sisters to behave themselves as well and don't go out." Hu Linger immediately nodded her head. She may be a demon, but the sight in front of her eyes had frightened her. "Linger, go back first to find your sisters. I shall go down to have a look in case these thousands of corpses pile up and form a dam." Finishing what he wanted to say, Qin Mu leaped down and sprinted on the walls of the cliff until he reached the surface of the river. He then stepped on the river and left. These corpses piled up with the floating ice, and every place they passed, more floating ice were swept along as they continued to surge downstream. Qin Mu quickly caught up to the ice tide of corpses, only to see it growing bigger. As the ice collided with one another to create a grinding sound, the corpses were squashed into broken pieces as they floated on the ice. Sprinting 3 miles downstream, the floating ice had already piled up into a terrifying ice mountain on the river with corpses hanging off of it. The ice tide and the ice mountain became heavier and taller as it slowly flowed forward. Even the river water flowing downstream was being blocked up, causing the surface of the river behind to rise. Qin Mu frowned. The river was still flowing in a straight path, but when it reaches the oasis where Woman Wu was, there will be a turn in surging river. If the floating ice can't pass through there, it would become stuck and turn into a dam lake. The river water and the floating ice would accumulate over time, stacking up to be 300 yards in height. When the ice tide and ice mountain can no longer withstand the pressure, it would shatter and collapse. The huge flood would sweep away and swallow everything in its path. No matter if it was a human or a beast, they would all be swept away by the flood. There were many villages in the Great Ruins that were constructed at the riverbank to allow easy traveling. If the flood was to burst forth, he had no idea how many villages would be destroyed from the disastrous outcome. Granny C and the rest are still downstream dredging the river. They probably still don't know that a dam lake is about to form here. There's only village chief left in the village, and it is inconvenient for him to move, so who can help me solve the issue with the ice tide? Qin Mu pondered over strenuously. The ice tide had flowed past the disabled elderly village while giving off grinding sounds as the ice chunks collided with one another. With his power, there was no way he could solve the ice tide. At the village entrance, village chief was unperturbed until he suddenly saw Qin Mu and the ice tide flowed by in front of the village with his eyes wide opened. He then shook his head and smiled, this punk, causing trouble again. Because of the blockade caused by the ice tide, the river level had almost spread to his legs. At this moment, Vital Chief flowed out from where Village Chief had broken his leg and transformed into 2 legs. He then stepped up into the sky and sat down, looking at Qin Mu. These legs were formed by Vital Chi and looked no different from real legs. If his Vital Chi was dispersed, his legs will vanish as well. That's right, I can find Woman Wu. On the river, Qin Mu's eyes lit up and immediately hastened his footsteps. With a few strides on the river surface, he He leaped onto an ice mountain, and with a burst of force, he leaped forward and left the ice tide behind him. Sprinting forward with flying speed, he finally reached the oasis in the heart of the river in just a short while. The oasis was like a lonely island, and on the island was a temple which was restraining an old monster called Woman Wu. Qin Mu reached the oasis in just a few steps and rushed straight into the rundown temple. Inside the temple, a little girl with 3 braids was swaying its legs in utter boredom as it waited for its praise to send themselves to the door. Seeing Qin Mu rushing in, its eyes turned red with fury from meeting its foe. The little girl immediately leaped down from the Buddha's hand and hid behind the Buddha statue, staring intensely at Qin Mu with hatred. "Woman Wu, I mean no harm." Qin Mu quickly explained, "The ice tide is almost here. I need your help to shatter the ice tide." The little girl came out from behind the Buddha statue and jumped onto the hand of the Buddha again without much interest. Not interested. The ice tide happens every year, and with the protection of the Buddha statue here, the ice tide won't flood this place. Qin Mu's gaze flickered and said, "I can cut off your chains and set you free." Woman Wu's eye lit up before becoming dull again as it shook its head. "If it were the elders in your village, they could cut off the chains, but you can't." Qin Mu's vital chi surged out and swept up the junior protector sword from his back and gave a chop down. Clink! A huge sound resonated out, and one of the chains wrapped around the great Buddha had a deep crack. What was weird was the crack in the chain was actually healing automatically. Without further explanation, he roused his vital chi and chopped down with another swing. Clink, clink, clink. A series of crisp sound rang out, and a chain was soon cut off by Qin Mu. Woman Wu was stunned. Astonishment and delight rose up in its heart. However, the copper Buddha suddenly opened his eyes and shouted with his thunder-like voice, "Evil creature, how dare you spoil my religious practice and spoil my merit?" "Spoiling your religious practice and spoiling your merit?" Qin Mu sneered as he cut off the rest of the chains. "You're merely a copper Buddha statue, so where does your merit come from? Is your merit restraining Woman Wu here? But you turned a blind eye when Woman Wu ate humans in front of you. If you had any merit, it would have all been squandered away by you." The body of the great Buddha quivered as the blood marks on the copper body glowed. With the golden leaves covering it, it became a great Buddha sparkling in golden lights as it spoke with a muffled voice. "Do you know how many people would be eaten and ruined if you set it free? I only know that it had hidden countless bones behind your back and used you to commit evil. I don't see you doing anything about it." Qin Mu cut off the second chain and sneered. "The ice tide right outside the temple happens several times a year. Have you done anything about it? To solve the ice tide issue is then considered a merit, but sitting in the temple to restrain a monster is not, much less allowing the monster to eat people. If you shatter the ice tide to save the common people downstream, then will you have great merits." The Buddha statue shone with a golden glow, and its hands moved as if he was becoming alive. Woman Wu immediately shouted in alarm, "The old bald donkey is an evil Buddha. He's trying to purify me to death. Hurry up!" Qin Mu moved quickly and went out of the temple in a flash as he used Junior Protector Sword to cut off the chains outside the temple. The sins of all lives need to be washed away by the flood. Only then could they rid themselves of evil. They reap what they sow. Boom. A violent tremor came out as the copper Buddha stood up and broke apart the temple with its head. It roared like thunder, which shook the heavens and the earth. "You evil spirit, how dare you spoil the teachings of Buddha? You stubborn evil creature can't be enlightened." The chains that had chained down the copper Buddha and Woman Wu instantly seemed to become alive as they whistled through the air and shot towards Qin Mu. "The teachings of your Buddha are all about saving yourself by saving others and not saving others for the sake of saving them. Hypocrite." Qin Mu leaped and avoided the coiling of a chain. He used his Junior Protector Sword to cut down the last chain. It would still be your merit if you killed Woman Wu back then when you brought it under control. But you merely restrained it and still allowed it to harm people. Why? Because eating people is its sins, and the greater its sins become, the greater your merit would be for purifying it. Bah! The sins of Woman Wu for the people it had eaten should be counted as your sins as well. Clank. Junior Protector Sword collided with the chains and a powerful force came out from the chain, deflecting the treasure sword away. Qin grunted and stumbled back while avoiding the chains that were like two black pythons. He then sneered, "With the flood around all the temple, you are not only sitting here and refusing to help people, but even stopping me from helping people, and you still think of attaining merits? Let me tell you, there are many elderly in my village that helps fight against the ice tide every year, saving the common folks and beasts, saving countless of lives. If one can become a Buddha just by merits alone, every one of them would already be golden body great Buddha and not like you, mere a copper statue. Ridiculous." The copper Buddha was extremely huge, and with a raise of its leg, the Buddha walked out of the rundown temple. With its palms together, the clanging of the metal chains sounded as the Buddha shone brightly and repelled Qin. All of Qin limbs and bones shocked as he hanged in midair while the chains came flying at him. Stepping on the chains, he sprinted along it as he used his vital chi to control Junior Protector Sword to cut down on the last chain that was shackling Woman Wu. The chains were like extremely thick pythons crisscrossing in midair as they attacked towards Qin, dazzling him. The copper Buddha was clearly made from brass, yet it was extremely nimble, simply unimaginable. Previously, the copper Buddha couldn't differentiate between Qin and Woman Wu. Only when Qin used the devil voice would the copper Buddha react automatically by saying Buddhist incantation to purify Woman Wu. Now that Qin had tried to release Woman Wu, the copper Buddha had changed its ways by attacking Qin automatically. The thick chains flew towards him in all directions, and Qin stepped on one of the chains to avoid the rest of the attacks. The power of the copper Buddha from the chains slowly grew stronger. The vibration caused by the chains grinding against one another made Qin unstable. His legs got sore with the vibration, and his control on Junior Protector Sword wasn't as accurate as before. The copper Buddha grew stronger and stronger as if there were limitless strengths in its body. At this moment, these strengths were awakening bit by bit. Granny C and Cripple had brought up this copper Buddha before and had said that there was something strange with the copper Buddha. Granny C had said she once decided to get rid of Woman Wu, but was stopped by the copper Buddha and didn't succeed. Granny C was naturally extremely powerful, yet she was unable to get rid of Woman Wu. This meant that when the power of the copper Buddha fully awakened, it would be extremely terrifying. And now, the copper Buddha's strength was awakening bit by bit. Even if it was partly awakened, it wasn't what Qin was able to withstand. Right at this moment, an earth-shattering crash sounded out. The ice tide from upstream had finally reached the oasis. The towering ice mountain, which was dozens of yards in height, rushed down under the violent currents and appeared right in front of the oasis, which was at the back of Qin. Qin immediately got shrouded by the shadow, and he hurriedly looked back only to see numerous ice chunks squeezing each other as they rolled up towards the pinnacle of the ice mountain before rolling back down again into the river. New ice chunks would be sent up to the pinnacle of the ice mountain again before rolling down. With the ice tide crushing everything in its path, the corpses on the ice were shattered into pieces that could not be found anymore. The only thing left was the rolling ice mountain that's surging forwards, crushing everything in its momentum. Tut! The copper Buddha also seemed to realize the imminent danger and couldn't care more about Qin as it stretched open his arms to face the rolling ice tide, trying to push it back. Bang! The surrounding of the oasis formed a huge golden bell from rays of light which enveloped the entire oasis. Numerous ice chunks collided onto the golden bell and created loud banging sounds as they shattered from the tremors. Every floating ice that collided onto the golden bell would cause ripples of golden light to spread out. From Qin angle, it was a splendid and magnificent sight. Following it, the ice tide collided, causing sounds like the booming of thunder, deafening the ears. In midst of the noise, the bell rings of the golden bell could also be heard. The power of nature against the Buddhism divine art of the copper Buddha was world-shaking. Even the oasis swayed from the vibrations and seemed like it could sink into the water any moment. The ice tide was blocked by the oasis and the golden bell, and this caused it to grow taller and taller. The ice tide at both sides had already continued to flow downstream through the sides of the oasis. Only the place which was blocked by the oasis had accumulated more and more floating ices. Gradually, the ice tide had the trend to flow over the oasis. Rattle. The chains shook as they flew towards Qin. This copper Buddha actually had energy left over to control the chains like spirit snakes to chase relentlessly after him. At the same time, the copper Buddha moved and gave off sonorous sounds of metal colliding as its palms struck continuously on the walls of the golden bells to reinforce it. The chains were coiled around on its body and flew around continuously with its movement as they attacked Qin Mu. Meanwhile, Woman Wu, who was in the form of the little girl, Xian Qinger, staggered from the pull of the chains and suddenly tripped, causing its face to become badly battered from being dragged around miserably. Qin Mu stepped on the chain and immediately felt that the great Buddha's strength had diminished quite a lot and wasn't as terrifying as before. He took the chance to cut down and break the last chain with a loud clank while using Junior Protector Sword. Woman Wu was stunned and couldn't refrain from being astonished and delighted as it lifted its arms to see the 2 golden loops around its wrists, along with the broken chains. There were also golden loops around its ankles, which were dragging 2 broken chains. "Stop daydreaming and move quickly," Qin Mu shouted loudly as he flew over. Woman Wu laughed loudly and its body suddenly bulged rapidly. Xian Qinger's skin burst apart randomly and revealed its true body, which was covered with bones. With its 100 feet dancing in the breeze, it shouted, "Little brother, jump onto my body and I'll bring you out of here." Qin Mu landed on its body. The body of this great demon was covered in bone armor as it barged forward towards the back of the oasis while dragging the golden loops and chains. Its legs moved very fast and soon rose up into the air. The 100 feet under its long body moved in unison as it broke through the air and charged towards the wall of the golden bell. "Evil creature, you're my merit and you still think of running away?" The copper Buddha turned around and its brass hand grabbed onto the void. The golden loops and chain on Woman Wu's body rattled and started to fly backward. Meanwhile, the chains on the copper Buddha's body also flew up by themselves as if they wanted to reconnect back with the broken chains. Woman Wu's blood ran cold. It fell down from the pull of the chains on its body. The strength coming from the chains on its legs grew greater and actually pulled her backward continuously. Using all the strength in her 100 feet, it tried its best to crawl forward, but couldn't help being dragged back. Qin Mu was planning on using Qi to manipulate his sword to cut off the golden loops on Woman Wu's limbs when suddenly, an extremely fine ray of light flashed by and broke open the golden bell before passing between the copper Buddha's eyes. The copper Buddha howled and its palm grabbed towards the front of its eyes. Woman Wu suddenly felt its body becoming light and immediately took to its heels to run. With a few steps, it rose into the air and rushed out from the area which was enveloped by the golden bell, vanishing on the river surface. Behind them, the copper Buddha howled continuously. Suddenly, the golden bell crumbled and mountain-like ice tide came crashing down, burying the oasis along with the copper Buddha. The ancient temple was also shattered in that instant. The entire oasis was flattened. "You and I have always minded our own business." The copper Buddha was furious. But before it could finish its words, it was pushed down into the river by the ice tide along with the oasis. In the air, a fine light flew over and hid inside Village Chief's hair. Village Chief acted like nothing had happened and walked downwards in midair, returning back to the disabled elderly village. 30 miles downstream, Surging River took a turn here to go around a mountain so to flow past a ravine. The ice tide was stuck here and more ice started to accumulate until the whole river path was blocked. "Woman Wu, stop." The 100 feet white bone centipede woman carried Qin Mu into the sky and slithered forward like a dragon with extremely fast speed. Upon hearing Qin Mu's words, it landed on the left peak of the ravine and laughed coldly. "Why should I listen to you, rascal?" Qin Mu jumped down from its back, looking bewildered. "I've saved you, so you naturally should help me by breaking apart the dam of ice on the river to repay me." Woman Wu wiggled its body and transformed back into Xian Qinger. With its limbs dragging the chains, it jumped around Qin Mu a few times with the chains rattling. Then, it stuck out its head from Qin Mu's back and chuckled. "I have to repay you because you helped me? Have you forgotten? How miserably had you treated me before? I was almost killed by the old bald donkey. Not only that, you even robbed all the treasures I had hidden all these years. I should be eating you up instead." Qin Mu smiled, "But you don't dare." Woman Wu's neck suddenly grew by several yards. It wrapped a few times around Qinmu before it looked at him straight in the face and sneered. I don't dare to? Now that you don't have the old bald donkey to help you, why wouldn't I dare? I live in the disabled elderly village, and I have 9 elders. Every single one of them could easily kill you. Qinmu smiled and continued. No matter how you change your face or how far you run, they can easily track you down, easily kill you, and easily make you wish that you were never born in this world. Chills went down Woman Wu's spine and its neck shrunk back, returning back to the adorable girl who jumped around while shaking the golden loops and chains on its hands. I'm scared of your elders, but I am not obliged to help you. The old bald donkey was right. Now that you saved me, I'm going to commit evil and eat people. Why should I help you save people? I'm going now. It turned around and left with the chains rattling. Qinmu suddenly said, Woman Wu, as what Buddhism preached, lay down the butcher's knife and become Buddha on the spot. This sentence is too superficial and has no distinction between good and evil, so it's hard to truly believe in it. However, if you help me settle the damned lake and save countless of lives downstream, it would be your merit, which would be a way greater merit than that Buddha ever did. Woman Wu stopped her footstep and turned her head back to listen curiously. Qinmu continued, helping me save people will raise your merit 100 times higher than that copper Buddha who restrained you. If you meet him again, would he still have the face to restrain you? Woman Wu leaned its head to one side and gave it some thought before bursting out in laughter. You have a point, I shall help you then. Hee. The old bald donkey pretended to be righteous by using the fact that I had eaten too many people to restrain me in the name of justice. He also said that he would use these churning river water to wash away my sins. I've told him that I only ate people because I'm hungry and not if they are good or evil. I only need to eat like how you humans need to eat rice, chicken, and vegetable when you're hungry. It looked at the dammed-up river below and continued. I had no feelings with the people I ate, so I only treated them as food. You don't have any feeling with vegetable and rice, that's why you eat them. The Baldy said I had fallacious reasoning and suppressed me. He did well, so I decided to eat people in his temple and not let him have any merit. However, if my merit is above him, I'll see if he still have the face to suppress me. There's too much ice in the river. If my spirit weapons were still around, I could break through the ice. However, my spirit weapons were all confiscated by the Baldy. Qinmu controlled the Junior Protector Sword and used Qi to manipulate sword to cut down on the ice tide blocking the ravine below. Woman Wu, assist me. The sword that cut off the chains? Woman Wu's eyes lit up and revealed its true form. With its 100 feet moving together, it leaped down the cliff. Qinmu jumped down and landed on its back. The 100 feet white bone centipede then flew in the air and carried Qinmu to the blockade made from the ice tide. Cleave! Qinmu shouted as the Junior Protector Sword cut down onto the ice tide. At the same time, Woman Wu spat out a breath and frightening demon vital Qi rushed out and surged frantically into the Junior Protector Sword. This Junior Protector Sword suddenly expanded 300 yards long and cut down on the ice tide. The ice tide grew higher and higher as floating ice kept getting sent up to the freezing blockade. If it continues to accumulate like this, it would definitely be a calamity for the lives on both shores of the surging river. Junior Protector Sword slashed through the air, and where the blade had passed, 2 walls of air could be seen with the naked eye. The 300 yards long sword then landed on the dam of ice, slashing all the way through like it was tofu. This is bad. Woman Wu's expression changed hugely and was about to fly up, but it was already too late. The dam of ice immediately collapsed under the pressure of the turbulent river water, causing numerous shattered ice to fly straight at them after being squeezed under the pressure of the water. From the looks of it, it was clearly a drowning disaster. Before the dam of ice even hit them, the hurricane had pressured them to fall from the sky. Chi. Numerous ice shards flew in random directions. Qinmu's face suddenly felt a wave of pain as one of the ice shards grazed his face. His vital Qi was dense and had an extremely strong defense. He couldn't be hurt from the pummeling of the raging ape, yet the ice shards were so fast that they could actually hurt him. From that, one can imagine how dangerous it would be if the dam of ice were to fall on them. Woman Wu carried him and ran as ice shards of all sizes flew past them along with the surging waves. Following that, the hurricane along with the ice shards and huge waves smacked right into their bodies, sending the monster and the human flying. Thud thud. Two loud thuds came from the cliff opposites as Qin Mu and Woman Wu smacked onto the cliff and embedded themselves in the walls. One of them was sprawled in an X shape while the other was in a series of H shape. Then, a screeching sound of a sword could be heard. When Qin Mu heard this sound, he knew something was wrong as the screeching of the sword was heading straight for him. He immediately opened up his legs and heard a clink sound as the junior protector sword nearly stabbed into his thighs. Phew. Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. Now his legs had formed an A shape as the junior protector sword was just 5 inches away from his body. Beside him, the great demon burst out in laughter. Qin Mu couldn't help it but laugh out as well. The laughter of the demon and the human grew louder and louder as it resounded throughout the whole ravine. Below them, the river water surged forth and a crisis was resolved by this peculiar duo. Not long later, Qin Mu and Woman Wu, who had transformed into Xianlinger, sat on the cliff while resting their hands backward as they looked at the blue sky and white clouds. They experienced tranquility in their hearts. "Who's that copper Buddha?" Qin Mu asked. "He's from the small Thunderclap Monastery, a different kind that had reached illumination, a demon just like me." Woman Wu looked at the golden loops on its legs. It is said that the patriarch of Small Thunderclap Monastery had worshipped Buddhism and became a disciple of the Great Thunderclap Monastery. However, he had rebelled and left the Great Thunderclap Monastery to create the Small Thunderclap Monastery, bestowing the title of Small Rulai on himself. I've heard that he was forced into the Great Ruins by Rulai of the Great Thunderclap Monastery, and so the Small Thunderclap Monastery had also moved into the Great Ruins. The successive generation that was in charge of the Small Thunderclap Monastery were all demons like me, but they called themselves Small Rulai. The one who had suppressed me at the ancient temple was the Small Rulai of this generation. Now that you have cut his chains and set me free, you have it in for you. Small Thunderclap Monastery? Small Rulai? Qin Mu was stumped for words. The Small Thunderclap Monastery is in Great Ruins? Of course. Demon monks aren't rarely seen. The monks of Small Thunderclap Monastery are extremely petty and would definitely seek revenge, let alone their Small Rulai. Woman Wu snickered. With the old Baldy's temperament, he will definitely seek revenge on you. Suddenly, an angry shout sounded out harshly. As a human, you actually allied yourself with a demon. Today, we as masters and disciples will have to subdue the demons. Qin Mu looked over and saw a few Taoists walking over. There were young males and females along with an elder. The Taoist elder had an austere of righteousness while the young males and females revealed expressions of excitement. It was obvious they were strong practitioners that had come into the Great Ruins from the outside world for the experience. Fellow Taoist priests, this demon and I had just resolved a crisis and demolished this damned lake to save countless of lives downstream. Qin Mu rose and solemnly said, "This demon had saved countless of lives and isn't." "Shut up, abandoned people." The Taoist elder shouted sternly in devotion to righteousness that inspires reverence. "You deserve to die even more for being in cahoots with a demon and helping a villain do evil. Today we shall get rid of both of you. My disciples, set up the formation and subdue the demons." "I'm hungry." The little girl beside Qin Mu licked its red lips and told him, "Some people are worse than demons." With his interest waning, Qin Mu leaped from the cliff and into the river below, his voice sounding out, "Woman Wu, I hereby release you, you're free." Landing on the river, he stepped on the waves. Screams came from the top of the ravine as Woman Wu revealed her true form and started its massacre. After a while, the demon had filled its belly and ran into the sky, slithering into the clouds before vanishing. "Cowherd boy, if fate allows, we'll meet again." The demon cloud caught up with Qin Mu and Woman Wu's voice came from it before going off in the distance. The spring river gradually warmed. It had been over 10 days since Qin Mu had broken the dam of ice with Woman Wu. The willow trees on the river shore had regained their shade along with the birdsongs and fragrant flowers while the ice tide had subsided. In the heart of the river, Qinmu suddenly stopped in his footsteps. However, he didn't sink into the river and remained standing on the surface of the water. Ripples spread out beautifully under his feet. He was using black tortoise vital qi to control the water condition, so he could still remain standing on the water like it was flat land. He had already grasped the technique of controlling water using black tortoise vital qi fluently. Kai. The sound of sword flying through the air pierced the sky. Qinmu was trying to use his fingers to control Junior Protector Sword, making it flick it upwards, smearing it horizontally and hacking it downwards. The sword moved along with his body and executed all the most basic moves. He had learned the most basic techniques of swordplay from Village Chief these few days. Other than stab, he had also learned techniques like hack, curve, parry, wave, poke, jab, cut, and smear. However, Village Chief didn't teach him any sword skills and only made him practice the most basic movements day after day. Meanwhile, at the side of the river, Blind stood there motionlessly with his cane, like a statue. Even since Qinmu said his goodbyes to Woman Wu, he returned to the village to tell the villagers about how he released Woman Wu. When he reached the part of Small Thunderclap Monastery, Old Ma and the rest forbade him from leaving the village. Even if he was to leave the village, he needed to have someone accompanying him. On the river, the sound of the wind grew louder. Every time Qinmu unleashed his sword, it would raise up wind and waves. What Village Chief taught him were the most basic movements of swordplay, yet they all burst forth with astonishing power in his hands. With every practice, the wind and waves on the river would grow bigger and more urgent. With a stab of his sword, the river surface would split 30 yards long and 3 yards deep, causing all the huge fishes and river beasts to stay away. With a flick, the river water surged into the sky and splashed down in a downpour. He then followed up with a curve and the river water turned into a water dragon rushing forward. Even though they might be the simplest moves that required the use of qi to manipulate sword, the power remained terrifyingly strong in his hands. He had been cultivating these basic movements for more than 2 years and already knew them thoroughly by heart. However, Village Chief still didn't impart a complete move. Suddenly Blind's ears twitched and he shouted, "Moor, it's time to stop, a ship is coming." Qinmu put Junior Protector Sword back into the sword pouch on his back and raised his head. He saw a ship sailing down and was stunned for a second, as this ship was the one that was drafting the topographic map of Surging River. Now that the ship was sailing back down from upstream, they must have finished drafting the waterway of Surging River. Opening up his stride, he avoided the path which the ship was sailing by. Flowing down with the river, the speed of the ship was very fast and soon reached in front of them. An exclaim of admiration came from the ship. To stand on the river without moving, what a neat skill and dense vital qi. Qinmu looked at the source of the sound and saw General Qin standing at the head of the ship looking at him along with the youth with a little baby Fat who held a foldable fan. The mysterious ice from the Dragon Palace. Qinmu's heart turned cold as he saw the huge slab of mysterious ice. In the mysterious ice, there was a dragon bead hanging high up along with a hand grabbing onto it. He could only see those as the rest of the stuff below the ice chunk was blocked by the side of the ship. However, even with just that, he knew where the mysterious ice, as well as the hand, had come from. It was evident that when the general and his men were drafting the topographic map of Surging River, they had discovered the Dragon Palace under the river. When they searched their way there, they must have discovered Gu Linwan and the young dragon sealed by the dragon bead. At this moment, the young dragon should still be in the mysterious ice. This general hasn't slain the soul of the mother dragon and most likely has kept the soul of the dragon mother to prevent the mysterious ice from melting. Their aim should be the young dragon in the ice. If the mysterious ice was to melt, the young dragon would die. He must have intended to bring the mysterious ice back to Eternal Peace Empire and invite masters to cure the young dragon. Therefore, he didn't save Gu Linwan yet. It's the youth who was on the peak with the devil ape. The baby Fat youth said in astonishment, "I didn't expect his vital qi to be so dense. It's even stronger than mine." Suddenly, Gu Linwan's voice came from the ice. "I can feel my junior protector sword." General Qin Feiyue, "Stop the ship. My junior protector sword is near." The rascal that tricked me is near. The ship stopped and General Qin's gaze landed on Qin Mu. You are the one that swindled Junior Protector sword from the Junior Protector of the Crown Prince? Qin Mu replied, he wanted to eat me, so I swindled his sword away. Since you managed to bring him out of the Dragon Palace, can you bring his sheath out for me as well? It would only be a complete set with the sheath. Qin Feiyue's gaze flickered. For you? This is the sword of the Imperial family. It's impossible to give it to you. Please return Junior Protector sword back to the Imperial family. Qin Mu shook his head in bewilderment. Why do I have to return it when I swindled it with my own ability? The baby fat youth, who was also called the seventh young master, burst out into laughter. What this youth said sure was interesting. Qin Feiyue snorted coldly and said indifferently, to lie to an official of the Imperial family and scheme after the treasure of an official of the Imperial family. Do you know how severe your crime is? There's no Imperial family in the Great Ruins. Qin Mu asked, puzzled. In a lawless place like this, who can convict me? For you to be this fearless, it looks like you have someone to rely on. Qin Feiyue looked at the shore and his pupils suddenly contracted. He then solemnly asked, Junior Qin Feiyue, the disciple of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, upper fourth-ranking General of Loyalty and Marshal, Eternal Peace Empire. May I know how to address the senior who is on the shore? Blind propped himself on his bamboo cane and chuckled, just a blind man. What else can you address me as? Merely an old disabled. Qin Feiyue's expression sank as he took a look around and saw disabled elderly village in the corner of his eyes. He then smiled. 3 years ago, Mu Beifeng, the prefecture head of Five Sprouts Prefecture of our Eternal Peace Empire, led many Li River sword sex experts into Great Ruins to seek revenge. Later on, there were people who found their bodies downstream. I had personally inspected the bodies of Mu Beifeng and the rest. They were stabbed to death by a spear, but the person who stabbed them didn't use a spear and had used a bamboo cane instead. Senior, do you also use a bamboo cane? With the bamboo cane in Blind's hand, he beamed. What else can a blind man use if it's not a bamboo cane? This cane is used for navigation in case I kick a rock when I can't see properly. Qin Feiyue heard things that were indirectly implied from what Blind had said and affirmed his guess. He then sneered, Senior, Mu Beifeng should have died near here, am I right? Did Senior see anything at the time? Blind replied bleakly, what can I see when I'm a blind man? General, you must be joking. I've heard of Mu Beifeng's name before. He actually died under evil hands? This pains my heart. Whilst the monkeys cried incessantly from one side of a river to another, leaving great men of succeeding generations to grieve for them. How heartbreaking, how lamentable. He lifted his bamboo cane and gently tapped the river surface. Waves surged on the surface of the huge river, causing the entire river to suddenly tremble violently a few times. The waves on both shores soared up to 30 yards in height and split apart the sky. Even the ship swayed erratically, causing many of the soldiers on board to lose their footings. Under the river, the waters split to two sides and revealed the gigantic spine of a giant beast which was blackish green, and it was as if a small island had appeared in the middle of the river. Surging river tremored, shaking this giant beast out from the water and into the air before plummeting it back into the water. Qin Mu immediately saw that this giant beast was being chained down. The other end of the chain was secured to the ship, which explained why the ship could move so fast. It was the effort of the giant beast. What's weird was that every other part of the river was trembling violently and only the river surface under Qin Mu's feet remained dead calm. Seventh young master immediately held onto the side of the ship in case he might stumble into the river. However, he couldn't help but shout out, Old Senior, it's supposed to be. How sad that he had to die before he gained victory, leaving great men of succeeding generations to grieve for him. You're mistaken. Qin Mu couldn't help replying, this young master, he meant that if all of you were to die here, it would be sad that he had to die before he gained victory, whereas since all of you are alive and only knows how to make a fuss, all of you would obviously be the monkeys crying incessantly from one side of a river to another. If you still insist on getting to the truth, you will just have to die here. Grandpa Blind is actually very wise. Blind's face was full of pride and chuckled, Moore is still the one who knows me best. If it was cripple or deaf, Those scumbags would have ridiculed me for being frivolous. The corners of Qin Feiyue's eyes twitched. The blind man's power was stronger beyond his expectation. It was lucky the blind man had only tapped the surging river. If he had flicked, the entire surging river might just have been flicked up by him. In the mysterious ice, Gu Linwan kept his mouth shut. He had obviously speculated Blind's power just from him tapping the river. He knew Blind was not to be trifled with, and if he insisted on wanting the sword, he would probably die here. We'll leave the junior protector sword here first. Let us go. Set sail. Qin Feiyue laid down the command, and a soldier immediately took out a bugle horn and blew into it. The sound coming out from the bugle horn was astonishingly deep, and when the giant beast under the water heard the sound of the bugle horn, it started to stir up waves. The water of the huge river suddenly lifted up like a water mountain that was higher than any of the other river surface, as it dragged along the ship and rushed downstream. General Qin, aren't you trying to ask the blind man who was the one that had killed Mu Beifeng? Why did you leave before getting an answer? Seventh young master poked his head out from the palace maids surrounding him and asked curiously, Young master, I have already gotten my answer. General Qin sneered. Mu Beifeng died at the hands of the blind man just now. The magnificent spear god was reduced to a blind man and has been hiding in this tiny village. What other terrifying entities must be hiding in seclusion with him? I can't handle this tiny village, therefore I can only request for reinforcement. The armor on his body rattled and the light in his eyes was like the clash of spear and blade. Under the whole heaven, every spot is the sovereign's ground. To the borders of the land, every individual is the sovereign's minister. This great ruins is also the land of the imperial family and not a lawless land. Mu Beifeng is an official of the imperial family, so how can he die in the hands of the wilderness? This village must be demolished and exterminated in order to show the might of our empire and the might of our imperial preceptor. Let the awe of our emperor descend onto the great ruins. How impressive. Suddenly a voice sounded out, sending chills down General Qin's spine. He turned his head back in difficulty only to see a crippled man unknowingly appeared behind him and leaning on the side of the ship with a simple smile. Qin Feiyue's eyes twitched for a moment and Cripple's figure vanished and was now back to back with him. He totally couldn't see how the crippled man had vanished and reappeared behind him. Qin Feiyue's forehead was covered in sweat. His palm was already on the hilt of his sword, but he didn't even dare to move at all. Does Imperial Preceptor knows of your big ambition? Cripple bent down and saw the topographic map of Surging River on the ship and laughed. Does Imperial Preceptor plans to move his army into great ruins by making you come to draft the topographic map of Surging River? Kiki, this little dragon is so pitiful. Eh? Guliwan, what's with that stinky face? I shall take your sword sheath away. Your banner isn't bad as well. I shall take this too. This little brother, your piece of jade is pretty good, and so is this fan. Baba, you're actually a girl? How unlucky. Qin Feiyue suddenly saw a slight opening and turned around as he drew his sword in a flash, but the crippled man behind him had already vanished. The crippled man's laughter came from several miles away. Go back and tell Imperial Preceptor to keep my leg safe and don't lose it. I'll come back for it personally. Crap, my fourth-ranking official seal. Qin Feiyue's expression changed hugely as he immediately searched his waist. The fourth-ranking official seal was gone, causing cold sweats to roll down his forehead. It was a big deal, losing the official seal. However, since he was the disciple of Imperial Preceptor, he could still keep it under wraps. What made him more terrified was that he didn't notice when the crippled man stole his official seal. What if the crippled man didn't steal his official seal and instead stabbed his heart from behind? He shivered uncontrollably at the thought. Seventh young master's face turned red with embarrassment as he hugged his own chest and ordered numerous palace maids to surround him so no one could pass through. When Cripple pickpocketed a few treasures from him, he only discovered that he was a female when he stole his feminine garment. Cripple considered touching women a taboo for when he steals, which was why there was an opening and why Qin Feiyue had the chance to attack him, giving him only the opportunity to run away. This crippled man was the thief god that sneaked into the imperial palace to steal the emperor's disc. the heaven-pilfering thief. Qin Feiyue suppressed the shock in his heart. Seeing that the seventh young master was fine, he let out a sigh of relief. Why, young master must have been shocked. Because of my inability. Gu Linwan, who was in the mysterious ice, was even more shocked. The crippled man actually managed to steal the junior protector sword's sheath from his body. Not only that, the black banner in his other hand was also stolen by the crippled man. Being sealed in the mysterious ice, he knew how hard and cold the mysterious ice was. Even a great expert like him was frozen and had no ability to escape. When Qin Mu swindled him of his sword, he also depleted all his vital qi just to send the junior protector sword out of the mysterious ice. However, this crippled man just disregarded the mysterious ice and touched it gently. It was like the hands of a ghost that easily swiped his black banner and sword sheath away. Lord Gu, this crippled man, had ventured into the imperial palace back in the days and entered the empire's treasury in front of the countless number of strong practitioners. There were countless traps in the empire's treasury, but they were all useless. He still managed to steal the emperor's disc, and nobody was able to stop him. Qin Feiyue said. Luckily, Imperial Preceptor intercepted him and managed to cut down one of his divine legs. Even so, Imperial Preceptor wasn't able to stop him from leaving with the Emperor's disc. He ended up vanishing without a trace. Gu Linwan was dumbstruck. Only after some time did he ask, with a leg missing, he still managed to vanish without a trace? Was this achieved because of his divine legs or his divine hands? Suddenly, the cry of a giant beast echoed from the front of the ship. Qin Feiyue was astonished and immediately ran to the head of the ship. His pupils contracted uncontrollably as he saw a spider web erected in front of the ship, locking several miles of the river in place. The giant beast, which was pulling the ship, had collided with the spider web and was unable to free itself no matter how much it struggled. The river then split apart, and an enormous spider slowly crawled out from under the river, dragging the giant beast onto the spider web. It then spewed out web continuously before sinking its teeth into the giant beast's body. Even when numerous soldiers used qi to manipulate swords and to summon divine arts, they weren't able to force the enormous spider to retreat. Even the spider web couldn't be cut down. Very soon, the giant beast shriveled and only a layer of skin was left. Qin Feiyue's body trembled. Even the hand that was holding onto the treasure sword was trembling. He wanted to hack the enormous spider to death, but he didn't dare to move. He saw an apothecary in green as he carried a herb basket on the shore. He looked very ordinary, but his face had changed beyond recognition and looked very sinister. Apothecary waved his hand, and the enormous spider on the river started to retracing its web. It then followed a thread and crawled back to the apothecary while shrinking smaller. It then became a small that tunneled into the apothecary's herb basket. Without the spider web blocking it, the ship began to float downstream again. Qin Feiyue then faintly heard a voice beside his ear tell Imperial Preceptor to drop any inappropriate thought on touching the great ruins. Be careful not to provoke us disabled elderly. Surrounded by the mysterious ice, Gu Linwan's voice trembled. It's the Poison King. Qin Feiyue also suppressed the pounding of his heart and composed himself. All soldiers, listen to my command. Raise the oars and return to eternal peace. After sailing a mile forwards, a soldier suddenly shouted with a trembling voice, General Qin, there's a man on the river. Qin Feiyue gritted his teeth, his face turning charcoal black. Which demon dares to block my ship? Do they really think I'm easy to bully? Knock him to death. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly noticed that the man on the river only had his upper body. It wasn't known who had chopped off the lower half of his body. The weird man was wielding two huge and weird knives as he stood still on the reef. Suddenly, the knife light tore apart the sky and shook the world. Qin Feiyue looked upwards and saw the clouds being split apart by the knife pressure. The knife light landed and cut down towards the ship. Whoosh! The water of surging river halved, becoming two rivers with one slash. 7 stars divine treasure awaken. Qin Feiyue roared in anger. The divine treasures in his body opened up one by one, causing his frightening vital qi to burst forth into 2 huge dragons by the ship's side, moving it horizontally for 300 yards. The knife light grazed the side of the ship's body. It continued to split the river and only closed it back after reaching the back of the weird man of the river. Hehe, it's not fun fighting the Imperial Preceptor's disciple. It's only interesting fighting the Imperial Preceptor. The weird man on the reef sheathed his knife, and with both of his hands propped onto the reef, he exerted force and jumped into the sky, vanishing without a trace. Qin Feiyue restrained his legs from trembling and shouted, "Stabilize the ship, stabilize." His voice trembled, and even he couldn't hear himself clearly. He could only sit down first to recompose himself. However, his thoughts were in a whirl. Gulimon was even more frightened than him as his voice quivered. Heaven Knife. That's Heaven Knife who once raised his knives to the heavens and died at the hands of a god. He's actually still alive. Qin Feiyue's expression couldn't remain calm. Why would so many old demons gather in such an unremarkable little village in great ruins? Spear God, Heaven Knife, Thief God, Poison King. Other than those people, what other frightening beings still remain in the village? He looked at the topographic map of great ruins. Then, he let out a sigh of relief as the map he had painstakingly drafted was still on the ship. Those fiendish people didn't destroy the topographic map of Surging River. That's not right. He suddenly came to a realization. These fiendish people didn't destroy the topographic map of Surging River not because they couldn't, but because they didn't think it was worth destroying. These old monsters believed that even if he took this topographic map away, Imperial Preceptor wouldn't dare to enter great ruins. "Why didn't they kill us?" asked the seventh young master, who was cross-dressed as a boy. "They didn't think we are worth killing." Qin Feiyue replied roughly, "They didn't think we were worth killing because our abilities were simply too weak." His heart was sour. As a disciple of Imperial Preceptor, he had always viewed himself highly. His reputation was also extremely high among all levels of society. He never expected to meet so many powerful beings after just one trip to great ruins. The conceit he previously possessed disappeared without a trace. When he had first met Blind, he still had a trace of arrogance with him. Despite being shocked by Blind, he still had a lofty and unyielding character. However, as he continued to meet the elusive cripple, the sinister apothecary, the savage butcher, his lofty and unyielding character was reduced to nothingness from the shocks he received. Only fear remained in his heart. There's nothing that can stop Imperial Preceptor. There's nothing that can scare Imperial Preceptor. Qin Feiyue thought about his master, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and his uneasiness subsided. His gaze hardened as he muttered, "If the old fellows in great ruins want to be mantises who try to stop the chariot, they will only die horribly." The ship continued to sail downstream when Qin Feiyue was suddenly stunned by what was before him. There was originally an oasis here and an ancient temple on the oasis. But the entire oasis had vanished without a trace. He had originally thought there was something strange with the ancient temple, but he didn't go in to inspect. However, he marked it on the map. Never did he think that when he came back, the temple would be gone. Eyes awaken. Qin Feiyue gave a low shout and light shot out from his eyes. Looking into the water, he was dumbstruck. The oasis was still there, but it had been flattened by some powerful strength. Now the ancient temple had sunk into the water. Great ruins. He composed himself and commanded the soldiers to rouse their vital chi to row the ship, leaving this place as soon as possible. Not long after they sailed away, the river split apart and a copper Buddha rose from under the river with the chains still on him. Even though the copper Buddha was extremely heavy, it seemed to be weightless as his feet stood on the surface of the water. The old monsters of disabled elderly village are actually this strong. They won't be easy to handle. The copper Buddha looked in the direction of disabled elderly village before exerting force in his legs as he ran ashore and continued sprinting. Stealing my merit. I will not let this matter rest. However, since Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor is beginning to stir and wants to enter great ruins, I shall let them fight each other first. When they are in a life and death struggle, my Thunderclap Monastery will just reap the benefits. In disabled elderly village, Qin Mu met Cripple walking over and throwing something at him. Qin Mu received it, and it was a sword sheath which was a match with Junior Protector Sword. Mu was stunned for a second and wanted to ask where Cripple got it from when Cripple suddenly stuffed another item into his chest. Mu took out to have a look. It was a milky white garment embroidered with a tree peony. It was 1 foot long and had stripes like ribbons. Along with it was a sweet scent. "Grandpa Cripple, what is this?" Mu asked puzzledly. The smile on Cripple's face froze as he resentfully said, "A sweat towel for you to wipe your sweat with." "How unlucky. Why do I have to touch something like this?" "Touching it once leaves you with 3 years of bad luck." Mu was puzzled. Why would touching a sweat towel bring bad luck for 3 years? The quality of this sweat towel was soft and had a smooth texture. It naturally had a fragrance as well, which was indeed good for wiping sweat. It must have been made from a unique kind of silk that was quite expensive. It was rare to see such textile in great ruins. Mu kept the sweat towel on his chest and played around with Junior Protector Sword and the sheath. He was pretty happy with it. The top half of the sword sheath of Junior Protector Sword was golden in color and was adorned with gems and pearls. At the mouth of the sheath, there was a carving of a fish dragon swallowing. Where the mouth of the fish dragon was the place where the treasure sword comes out from the sheath. The bottom half of the sword sheath was silver gray in color without any decorations or carvings. The tail of the sheath was sculpted with a dragonfish's tail, which was golden in color as well. Ding! Mu returned the sword to the sheath. His vital chi surged into the sword sheath and Junior Protector Sword was once again unsheathed. When unsheathing, a huge dragonfish appeared from the sword sheath and leaped above his head, spitting out the sword. Mu raised his hand and pulled out the sword from the fish mouth, feeling a sense of satisfaction. The sword sheath is truly a good item. It still has the apparition of a fish dragon. He returned his sword back into the sheath and the fish dragon swallowed the Junior Protector Sword before disappearing into the sword sheath. Mu was over the moon and poured his vital chi into the sword sheath again. The fish dragon appeared again and spat out Junior Protector Sword. He pulled out the sword before putting it back in again, making the fish dragon fused back into the sword sheath. He played with the sword over and over again until Blind couldn't help but speak out, "Moor, stop playing. Your granny had brought back another few livestock. You'll need to herd the cows. These few cows will be brought to Border Dragon City to be sold tomorrow." Mu gave a sound of acknowledgement and immediately returned to the village. He then brought the 6 cows out to herd with questions in his heart. Granny had just sold the livestock in the village a few days ago. How come there are 6 more cows? Where did these cows come from? As he walked out of the village, he saw village chief, apothecary, and Blind gathered around, discussing something. Cripple was sitting on the side, dismantling the black banner. He threw the banner flag to Old Ma to put it up as a curtain for his carpenter shop. The pole was thrown to Granny C to oust the chicken. The next day, Mu prepared the cow cart and Granny C smiled, "Moor, this time you can follow us into the city." Mu was astonished and delighted. He immediately carried his Junior Protector Sword, pig slaughtering knife, bamboo cane, iron hammer, and jumped onto the cow cart. Blind walked calmly from behind and sat beside Granny C on the cow cart. The cart was filled with ironware made by Mute. There were beast skins and furs that Old Ma, Cripple, and Mu had obtained from hunting. Among the goods were also 2 goats with their hooves tied up. The 3 big yellow cows harnessed in front of the cow cart were very strong. There were 3 more still tied at the back. The youth cracked his whip and the big yellow cows blinked their eyes innocently as they walked out of the village. This was the first time he entered the city. Therefore, he couldn't help being excited. He was so excited that he felt like flying. He totally didn't notice the innocent looks from the big yellow cow and mountain goats. Border Dragon City was quite a distance from disabled elderly village as far as 300 miles away. Therefore, entering the city was a major event. However, with great ruins being desolated, the roads weren't easy to travel on. They must first cross the water path before crossing several miles on land to reach Border Dragon City. Mu drove the cart to the side of the river only to see Cripple binding up a big bamboo raft. He carefully drove the cows onto the bamboo raft and Cripple released the mooring rope. The bamboo raft floated down along with the river as its speed grew faster. However, even with this speed, it would take them 4 to 5 days to reach Border Dragon Village. Floating a dozen miles downstream, Blind used his bamboo staff to tap on the water surface, and the bamboo raft floated to the shore instantly. Qinmu didn't understand the reason for doing so and raised his head to look at the shore. However, he realized that was the direction of Grandma Temple, and there were many people from various villages already gathered there. Most of them were driving horse carts and cow carts as they waited by the riverside. Surging River was dangerous with rapid currents. There were many river monsters and ferocious big fish in the river. For this reason, all the villagers from various villages would normally choose to head to Border Dragon City on the same day. The more people there were, the easier it was for them to look out for one another. Many bamboo rafts were moored at the riverside. There were even more bamboo rafts that were sailing over. Not long after, there were a total of hundreds of bamboo rafts gathered together. Blind took out a few incenses and lit them against the wind before sticking them on the riverside. The other villagers also came forward to stick their incenses in the ground. The smoke of incense filled the air and floated on the river along with the gentle breeze. Suddenly, someone shouted out a chant loud and clear. More and more people started to sing loudly by the riverside. It was a river song, a song to worship the river gods. With you, I wandered down the 9 rivers. A whirlwind rose and the waters barred us with their waves. We rode in a water chariot with awning of lotus leaf, drawn by 2 dragons to pull at the sides. I climb Kunlun and look in all directions. My heart rises as I am agitated and distraught. Dusk is coming, but I am too sad to think of returning. Of the far shore are my thoughts as I lie awake and yearn. The ancient intonation revolved around the nasal and throat of numerous villagers as everyone joined in to sing. With their melodious and heroic voices, the spectacle made Qinmu felt indescribably moved. Suddenly, the water surface in front parted, as huge beasts revealed their heads from the water. Numerous huge beasts appeared from the bottom of the river. They had green-colored back and 4 huge webs that were like fins. They also had a head similar to fish, but had a long nose which was like a spear. As the heads of the huge beasts in the water rose, they began to look like tiny hills. Their noses came close to the shore, and they took deep breaths in front of the incenses. All the incenses on the shore burned rapidly as the smoke entered the nostrils of these huge beasts. These huge beasts closed their eyes and puffed up a huge ring of smoke after a while, as though they were enjoying this very much. The villagers at the shore took the chance to drive their cow carts onto the green back of the huge beasts. Seeing the current situation, Qinmu also immediately drove the cart up one of the backs of the huge beasts. Granny C took up a big piece of meat she had prepared earlier and threw it into the water. The huge beast ate the piece of meat and let out a loud cry before flapping its 4 webs and carrying the cow cart along with the 3 people on it downstream. Behind them, the huge greenback beasts let out long cries that fluctuated up and down as they accompanied the tune of the villagers singing while carrying the villagers forward. These are strange beasts that are only found in Surging River. They are called river carriers. Granny C continued, "River carriers are the river gods that reside in the heart of the villagers. They like the smell of incense and beef. What they love the most is to listen to songs that praise them. People living on the side of the river can attract them over just by lighting a few incenses. By offering beef to them, we can make the river carriers bring us down the river. If the river carrier is hungry on the way there, we will have to feed it more beef or else it will go on a strike and throw us into the water." Qinmu clicked his tongue in wonder. The swimming speed of the river carriers was very fast. In addition, they were swimming downstream as they braced the waves with the wind blowing in their face. It was even faster than steeds galloping on land. Qinmu did some calculations, and with the speed the river carriers were going at, they could reach Border Dragon City before nightfall. In Surging River, the cries of the huge river carriers fluctuated up and down along with the mountains on both shores. The sun shone on their faces, and the surface of the river shimmered with golden ripples. Qinmu looked into the distance and suddenly felt his body and mind becoming endlessly vast, as if every single one of the golden river, green mountains, blue sky, and ravines were all concealed in his chest. This was a magical land with magical people and river beasts. Despite it being barren lands and wild rivers that had shrews and wicked people to the people outside of great ruins, as far as Qinmu was concerned, this was his homeland. In the evening, as the sun sets west, Qinmu saw various small docks on the side of the river. The river carriers gradually slowed down their speed and swam to the docks. Granny C rose and smiled. We're almost at Border Dragon City. Moor, drive the cart down and let us quickly head into the city. Qinmu stopped the bamboo raft and drove the cart ashore. Looking back, he saw the other river carriers reaching the shore and the people of the other villagers also quickly driving their horse carts and cow carts down, heading in the same direction. The cow cart traveled a mile forward and climbed over a small hillside. There was a slope ahead, so Qinmu jumped off a cow cart as he planned to guide the big yellow cow steadily so the cart wouldn't slide off the slope. However, his heart suddenly jolted as he stared blankly at the sight in front. Under this hillside, there was a huge path leading towards a simple but majestic city. The four corners of the city wall had stone pillars that were 100 yards thick and 500 yards long. Every stone pillar had a golden divine dragon coiling around it, which was sculpted and inlaid with golden leaves. Therefore, they had a brilliant gold shimmer. The city gate tower of the city was also constructed in the shape of a dragon's head. The city gate was the dragon's mouth, while the cornices of the city gate towers were like two dragon's horns, making it both malevolent and domineering. Border Dragon City. One of the rare, flourishing lands of Great Ruins. Great Ruins lacked resources. Seasonings were all precious commodities that have to be bought from the outside world, and not anyone could go to the outside world. Only flourishing land like Border Dragon City would have merchants coming from the outside world to bring their goods into trade. At the same time, they would bring the precious goods from Great Ruins and sell them to the outside world. The divine dragon pillars here are way bigger than the stone statues in our village. With heartfelt admiration, Qinmu exclaimed, "If we could steal it away and place it at our village entrance, it would definitely be impressive." Granny C rolled her eyes at him. If we could steal it, Granny would have done it a long time ago. Unless you can make all the old fellows in the village take action, it would be impossible to steal it away. Move quickly, the sky is almost dark. We'll have to quickly enter the city. The wheels on the cart rattled as Qinmu drove the cow cart into the city. Looking around curiously, everything in Border Dragon City intrigued him. In the city, there was an endless stream of horses and carriages. There were people everywhere as well. It was the first time he had seen so many people ever since he was born. Furthermore, there were also numerous well-dressed girls as they stood on top of the buildings, waving their arms enthusiastically at him, calling him to go up to play with them. The people in the city sure are cordial. Qinmu was very excited as he waved back at the girls and shouted, "After I finish selling my goods, I will come back to play with big sisters." Blind didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Moor, these girls upstairs are girls who took a wrong step. They aren't really trying to play with you. If you go up, you will be stripped of your skin and you will even have your bone marrow sucked out. Qinmu jumped in shock. Wrong step? Grandpa Blind. They're all standing steadily and doesn't look like they took any wrong step. Could they be demons like Woman Wu? Woman Wu had said that it wanted to play some shameful stuff with me, but I didn't agree with it. Blind also didn't know how to explain this to Qinmu, so he just laughed coarsely. This city is also called the Dragon City that never sleeps. At night, there are lanterns that light up the night streets. Every village within the radius of a few thousands of miles would gather here to trade. Moor, Granny, I shan't stay with you two anymore. Granny, do you have some pocket money? He propped himself upright with his bamboo cane and stretched out one hand with a face that was full of smiles. Granny C pretended not to see it. Blind stretched his hands to grab the beast skins on the cart and smiled. Moor, lend me 2 beast skins. When I win some money from gambling, I will return your money with interest on top. Qinmu smiled. Feel free to take them, there's no need to return. Don't give it to him. Granny C scolded angrily. This old geezer would always run off to the gambling den every time he comes here. Every time he would lose until he becomes totally broke. The 2 beast skins are enough for us to buy plenty of seasonings. It's better to do that than letting him throw them into the river. I can at least hear 2 plops even if I throw them into the river. Blind immediately draped the two beast skins on his body and took off, vanishing into the crowd. Granny C stomped her feet in anger. Qin Mu asked bewilderingly, "Granny, what's a gambling den?" Granny C flew into a rage. "You wanted to play with girls who took a wrong step, and now you want to go to the gambling den. Moore, you're learning bad things." Qin Mu was puzzled. "Don't be angry, Granny. I won't play with them as you wish." "That's right, Granny. Is there a cat house here?" The cat house hall master, Fu Qingyun of Heavenly Devil Cult, said that I can find her at places that have a cat house. Granny C stared at him and sneered. "Now you want to visit a low-grade brothel? You better stay far away from Fu Qing and that coquettish fox." Qin Mu was bewildered. He was clearly going to a cat house to find people. When did it become a low-grade brothel? What kind of place is a brothel anyway? There are so many rules in the city. I can't do this and can't do that, the youth grumbled. The young and the old drove the cow cart into the market. It was very crowded here, and there were all kinds of goods on sale. There were also people of different races wearing strange and unique clothing, dazzling Qin Mu's eye. Very soon, Granny C sold the ironware and skins from the cart for some seasonings. The merchant should have been from the outside world, as he had a unique accent and claimed he was from Eternal Peace Empire. Even though Granny C was a woman, she was used to being extravagant and wasn't good at haggling prices. She sold the ironware that Mute had forged cheaply, and even the beast skins and furs didn't fetch a good price. However, the merchants had good consciences and felt like they had taken small advantage of Granny C and Qin Mu. Therefore, they gave them another small sack of dragon coins that contained 100 of them. Dragon coin was the currency of Border Dragon City. On the coins were imprints of a dragon pillar that was similar to the dragon pillars on the four corners of Border Dragon City. Qin Mu felt the coins were blessed with a unique formation. The coins should have been forged with a unique technique to prevent people from imitating it. The two of them then sold off the cows and the goats. The cows and the goats seemed to know their fate and couldn't stop crying as they bit onto Qin Mu's clothes, refusing to let go. Qin Mu hesitated, but Granny C whispered, "They are all bad guys." Qin Mu jumped in shock. These few cows and goats were really humans turned by Granny C using devil nature technique. They are a bunch of bandits. Granny C's voice was soft like silk. "Remember the time I brought you out of the village to deliver the baby? When we were there, the whole village was slaughtered. These few years I have been searching for traces of these bandits, but was never successful. However, just a few days ago, I finally found them." Qin Mu's hearts tremored. He pulled his shirt back and let the merchants drag these cows and goats away. What these livestock might face was either to be slaughtered or to plow the land. Even though he felt that it wasn't right to do this, he couldn't say what Granny C did was wrong too. Great Ruins was such a place. The strong prey on the weak. What Granny C did may be extreme, but it was better than doing nothing. He was even somewhat touched. The incident had created a huge impact on Qin Mu, and never would he thought that over 10 years later, Granny would still think of taking revenge for the villagers who had died tragically. The two of them bought some rolls of textile and fine wine and brought them to the inn where they were staying at. Granny C suddenly stopped in her tracks when she saw a shop that was selling rouge and powder. Good stuff. Only this kind of exquisite powder can match up to Granny's exceptional beauty. The old woman was over the moon as her eyes lit up. With air leaking out of her mouth, she caused a bunch of maidens to chuckle nonstop. Granny C turned a deaf ear to their laughter and bought a bunch of cosmetics, spending almost all the money they had left. Glancing at Qin Mu, who was standing on the side and carrying all the big and small boxes, she felt somewhat bad. She dug into the coin pouch to take out the last dragon coins and stuffed them into Qin Mu's pocket. She then said softly, "Moore, go treat yourself to something good. Go buy the items you like. Don't go just yet. Help me deliver the cosmetics to the inn first." Qin Mu delivered the cosmetics to the inn, where the inn owner greeted them respectfully and said that he had prepared the guest rooms for them. Qin Mu sized up the inn owner suspiciously, and his heart jolted slightly. The inn owner winked at him and said softly, "Subordinate pays his respect to young cult master." 360 halls of Heavenly Devil Cult has dipped their hands into all professions. To think they even opened an inn in Border Dragon City. Qin Mu composed himself and walked into the guest room. After putting down the items they had bought, Granny C immediately chased him out. "It's rare for you to come out once in a while. Therefore, you should go enjoy yourself. Oh, and remember to spend your dragon coin wisely." Shinmu took his dragon coin and left. Border Dragon City was even charming at night with the glow of lantern lights. Various peddlers and people from various villages had come out to sell all kinds of strange items. The street was filled with vast crowds that created a sea of bobbing heads. My daughter and I are villagers from Cow Family Village, and we just had to stop by here. We don't covet titles or money. It's just that my daughter has reached a marriageable age and had no one in mind yet, so I would like to find a son-in-law through a martial arts competition. I seek a good man with an outstanding martial skill. Shinmu heard this voice and stopped his steps. Looking towards the arena, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. So many people were there that it even seemed dangerous passing through the impenetrable crowd. The father and daughter of Cow Family Village are here to find a son-in-law with a martial competition again. The last time they were finding a son-in-law was 3 years ago at Grandma Temple. Could it be that they still haven't found anyone even after 3 years? What can I buy with 1 dragon coin? Shinmu was just thinking about it when he heard someone shout, selling priceless treasure at just 3 copper coins. He looked towards the source of the voice and saw many people in the alley putting out items that looked strange. They were all broken bricks and tiles. Could those broken bricks and tiles all be priceless treasures? Why are priceless treasures sold so cheaply? Shinmu was astonished and secretly opened his heaven's eyes to take a look. He couldn't help but shake his head in disappointment. These items were really just broken bricks and tiles. Most of them were scavenged from the ruins of great ruins. They had not even the slightest spirit energy and were far too inferior compared to treasures like spirit weapons. Even if you give them to people as a gift, they might not even want it, much less selling them for 3 copper coins. However, there were still numerous people looking like practitioners standing in front of the stalls and picking out items, hoping that they could really find a treasure among them. Shinmu looked from one stall to another, and his heart moved slightly. He did find some good items. On some of the stalls, there were shattered pieces of weapons that caught his eyes. The shattered pieces of the weapons gave off a faint glow. They should be pieces from spirit weapons that have some worth. He went forward to ask, but ended up speechless. A shattered piece of a spirit weapon actually cost dozens of dragon coins. This is a scam, right? Shinmu continued to look around and saw a stall that had laid out dozens of crocs on a goatskin. Most of the crocs were broken. They either had their lids missing or were cracked in some corners. However, when he looked with his heaven's eyes, these crocs gave off an extremely intense glow that far surpassed the shattered pieces of spirit weapons. It was even stronger than the spirit weapons he was selling. How much are the crocs? Shinmu went up to ask. 3 copper coins for 1. The stall owner replied. Shinmu took out the dragon coin from his pocket and said embarrassingly, "I only have 1 dragon coin. Can you sell all of them to me?" The stall owner was astonished and elated as he immediately snatched over the dragon coin, packing up the crocs and handed them over to Shinmu with a smile. "They're all yours." Silly boy. The stall owners at the side laughed softly. He doesn't even know a dragon coin is worth 1,000 copper coins. The stall owner gripped tightly onto the dragon coin and immediately said, "Little brother, you can't go back on your words." Shinmu only learned the worth of a dragon coin now and refreshingly smiled. "Since you and I had a deal, of course I won't go back on my words. I feel it is worth it to pay a dragon coin for these crocs." The stall owner exhaled in relief and was about to leave when a crisp voice sounded out, "Hold it. How much are these crocs, little brother?" Shinmu raised his head and saw a few luxurious men walking over. In between them was a youth who was dressed even more luxuriously. The youth had delicate features and some baby fat on his cheeks. Compared to Shinmu, he had more of a graceful air around him as he stared at the goatskin with interest. "Divine arts practitioners," a stall owner cried out. Shinmu also cried out, "You're the chubby fatty 7th young master from the Eternal Peace Empire's ship." Chubby fatty 7th young master? The youth was stunned for a second and immediately recognized Shinmu. Slightly embarrassed, he gritted his teeth. "Who's the chubby fatty 7th young master?" Shinmu had no interest in the chubby fatty 7th young master and looked at the few people behind him. These people were extraordinary and have vital chi flowing out of their bodies. One of them had a green dragon coiling around his body. The dragon's head was higher than his head and was looking at its surrounding vigilantly with its bright eyes. This person obviously was a green dragon spirit body who had awakened his 6 directions divine treasure. He was a divine arts practitioner that has his vital chi showing its form at all times. Despite Qinmu having dense vital chi and could also make his vital chi show its form, he could only do it during battle. Only when his vital chi was extremely strong and mixed with blood and chi could he let others see his vital chi. However, it was different for divine arts practitioners. Divine arts practitioners could make their vital chi show its form whenever they liked. A divine art could be concealed within their vital chi, and this divine art could be unleashed the very instant they meet an enemy's attack to counter the incoming enemy. Qinmu had once heard Granny C say that spirit embryo realms were only considered martial arts practitioners. Only when one cultivates to 5 elements realm could they be considered a grandmaster and be proficient in the changes of 5 elements, the evolving battle techniques, spells, and other such moves into divine arts. And once the wall of 6 directions divine treasure was broken, one would become a divine arts practitioner and be able to use divine arts. Even though Border Dragon City wasn't small and had a lot of divine arts practitioners, to be able to make divine arts practitioners follow behind was pretty impressive. Of course I'm selling these crocs. Qinmu gave it some thought and set a price, 100 dragon coins for one. He had originally thought that he had asked too much, but he didn't expect the chubby fatty 7th young master to smile warmly and nod. That's cheap. Deal. There's a total of 36 crocs in your goatskin, so it's a total of 3,600 dragon coins. Hi, official Ding. Settle the payment with him. A person behind him bowed and replied, understood. He then came forward and closed the account with Qinmu. The stall owners and the visitors in the alley were stunned, and their breaths became ragged. The man who had sold the crocs to Qinmu earlier had his eyes twitching violently and almost fainted. He looked intensely at the crocs, but he didn't dare to snatch them. Even though a dragon coin wasn't large in size, 3,600 of them were still quite a large amount and weighed over 10 pounds altogether. Qinmu slung the coin pouch onto the hilt of his pig slaughtering knife and exclaimed silently, "The chubby fatty 7th young master sure is generous." 7th young master's eyes lit up as his gaze landed on the pig slaughtering knife on Qinmu's back. "If you're willing to sell me your knife, I can give you an even better price." Qinmu shook his head. "My knife is way better than those crocs, so I'm not selling." That's true. Just the materials used for your knife had already surpassed those used for the crocs. 7th young master gave the crocs to a follower beside him and smiled. These crocs were created by a divine arts practitioner of 6 directions realm. There are a total of 36 spirit weapons, therefore, are named 36 Heavenly Stars crocs, which is able to form Big Dipper Devil Purge formation. Even if it's slightly broken, the power is still there. These crocs are useless to me anyway, and I'm only thinking of bringing them out of Great Ruins to sell to those children of the nobility and make a fortune. I had seen the 36 Heavenly Stars crocs, therefore, I recognized them. Your eyesight seems to better than others. Could it be that you have also seen it before? Behind him, a follower coughed. 7th young master, you're a noble in disguise, therefore, it isn't safe here. 7th young master got annoyed. Aren't all of you being too controlling? There's no more joy in me coming out to play. After he had finished grumbling, he shook his head and left. Qinmu knew he was at Qin Feiyue's side. Qin Feiyue was also very respectful to him, therefore his status wasn't ordinary. It was natural that these followers didn't want him to be in danger. Just as he was about to leave, the stall owner who sold him the crocs suddenly grabbed onto the corner of his shirt and shouted, "Don't go. My crocs were worth over 3,000 dragon coins, yet you want to buy them with just 1 coin? You'll have to compensate me." He tried to grab Qinmu's coin pouch after saying that. Qinmu frowned slightly. Suddenly, his hairs stood up as he felt a sense of danger. A person closed in on him in the alley. Flipping over his sleeves, he revealed a strange-looking weapon. It was like 2 curved blades placed together that was unusually sharp. The person's palm faced downwards, and the strange weapon stayed on his palm and didn't drop down. Instead, It started to whirl and sliced towards Qin Mu's neck. Qin Mu's vital qi surged into his feet, and he moved backward suddenly. The stall owner was about to grab his coin pouch, but Qin Mu had already retreated several yards away. With the reflection of the knife flashing, the guy was like a shadow sticking close to Qin Mu. The weird knife on his palm flew up and down. Qin Mu took a hurried look and saw a thread connected to the strange knife. On the sides of the strange knife were two curved blades. The handle was in the middle of the two blades, where the fine thread was connected to. Using thread with refined qi and using qi to manipulate knife? He's a martial arts practitioner. This practitioner's knife skills was extremely peculiar. His footwork was slippery like an eel tunneling around. With knife skills as his main choice, it was especially dangerous when he executed his skill in this small alley. The snow-white knife light came top down in an arc, and its power was not weak. At the same time, Qin Mu saw other people were also eager to give it a try as they stood up one by one. It was obvious that this coin pouch had stirred the greed in the hearts of these people. Over 3,000 dragon coins was definitely a big fortune, enough to incite people's greed to kill. I've got to end this quickly. Qin Mu abruptly stopped his steps as his vital qi surged boundlessly into his fists. His feet moved relatively to the vital qi that reached both his arms and circulated into his fingers. Clenching his fingers into a fist, his fingers flicked out like arrows released from a strong bow just as his fist collided with the strange knife. Thunderclap 8 strikes second form, thunder fingers of the pipa player. Clank. His first finger flicked out, and the force of his finger gave a loud whistle, flicking away the blade that was spinning rapidly. The second finger flicked out, and the practitioner's vital qi thread was broken apart. Qin Mu's third finger flicked out and hit the palm of the practitioner, who gave a loud grunt as a large hole opened up in his palm, badly mangling it. Every finger of Qin Mu's contained extreme dense vital qi. Even though his vital qi couldn't unleash power like white tiger vital qi, it was extremely dense, and combining it with the astonishing strength of his body, 3 fingers were enough to break the attack of that practitioner. He then clenched his hand into a fist again and gave a punch towards that practitioner's chest. That practitioner's body warped from the strength of this punch and flew backward. Spring thunder on the lonely East Sea. Qin Mu's feet exerted force and rushed to the face of the practitioner before he even landed on the ground. The eyes of the practitioner revealed an expression of fear. However, he was in midair and couldn't defend. At the moment, 2 martial arts practitioners on both sides of the alley saw Qin Mu rushing to the practitioner, and their eyes lit up. With no explanation, both of them burst forth and attacked Qin Mu. Bang! 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 Before the 2 practitioners could even unleash their first attack, they saw Qin Mu's fist becoming bigger and bigger. It was as if a barbarous ground dragon had smacked them straight in the face. Their heads flipped backward, and they went into the wall. The rest of their bodies below their neck hung from the walls. The wall had spiderweb cracks from the impact. The practitioner who was punched in the chest by Qin Mu suffered another heavy blow. This punch was even more vicious than the first, causing him to fly back at an even greater speed. In the alley, a figure flashed and several banging sounds rang out. 7th Young Master and the few divine arts practitioner were still walking out of the alley when they heard the sounds behind them. They turned around, revealing expression of astonishment. The practitioner who was blown away for the 3rd time flew towards the 7th Young Master. The few divine arts practitioners frowned and were about to do something when 7th Young Master smiled. There's no need for that, we'll avoid him. The few of them turned away to let him pass, but they saw that Qin Mu was sticking close behind the practitioner. His punches were insane like lightning, coupling strength and gentleness. As the last punch was unleashed, the practitioner was blown out of the alley and crashed into the wall opposite of the alley. The wall was broken by the butt of the practitioner, and his body was stuck inside the wall. His limbs drooped powerlessly and hung there unable to move. Behind Qin Mu, over 10 practitioners had their heads stuck in the walls and their bodies hanging outside. With their flailing limbs, they were unable to get themselves out. Impressive skill! The few divine arts practitioners exclaimed in admiration. One of them whispered, "Young Master, that man sprinted like huge raging waves that can split the sky." It's a type of extremely powerful battle technique. If his punches and kicks earlier could surpass their limits, they would become divine arts. Seventh young master was astonished. What he used was a battle technique? A top-notch technique among the battle techniques. Seventh young master gently nodded his head. I've heard a story of that time. Imperial Preceptor had discussed the path with the battle technique school back then and slaughtered many great pillars of that cultivated battle technique. From then on, battle techniques could no longer be viewed similarly to divine arts and was classified as heresy. Many heretics escaped into great ruins. Could he be one of the heretics' disciple? Another follower whispered, Border Dragon City isn't eternal peace. There are crooks mixed in with the honest folks, and they are mostly vicious people who are at the end of their rope and no way out. Therefore, we have the duty to be absolutely careful. There should be surviving members from back then standing before this youth. Young master, let us quickly meet the general. Qinmu didn't kill them ruthlessly and held back half of his strength. However, the sight of over 10 practitioners hanging on the wall was still pretty terrifying. Of course, this was nothing to him. When fighting with Old Ma and the rest in the village, and when fighting with Devil Ape and who linger outside the village, he had always used his full strength. It isn't safe carrying so many dragon coins on my body. Why don't I just buy some stuff and return the rest of the dragon coins to Granny when I return to the inn? The youth didn't bother himself with what happened and bought some more fine silk fabric, ordering people to send them to the inn. He had planned to prepare more clothing for Old Ma, village chief, and the rest. Qinmu bought some more interesting items and planned to gift them to Old Ma, Cripple, and the rest before returning to the inn. Unexpectedly, Granny C wasn't in the room and had gone out without him knowing. Blind had also vanished without a trace. Since it's a rare chance to come here, it would be better if I take a look around to widen my horizons. Qinmu took out 100 dragon coins and hid the rest of the money carefully before walking out of the inn to take a look around. Border Dragon City was especially bustling at night and really expanded his horizons. There were martial competitions, arena challenges, operas, lion dances, and even people seeking revenge. He subconsciously walked to the heart of Border Dragon City. The structures here were even more majestic. There are many ancient structures that were left behind by people living in great ruins before the darkness had invaded. The temples and shrines were extraordinary. Qinmu awakened his heaven's eyes and looked at the ancient structures, clicking his tongue in wonder. The god statues here may look like normal statues of gods, but in his eyes, they were gods giving off lofty radiance. He studied them one by one and didn't have any fear towards these gods. He didn't disrespect the god statues and only admired the skill of the godly person who had sculpted the god statues. Border Dragon City was built on a huge ruin. The stone statue was made from the hands of the devil and the gods from a distant age. Based on the technique of sculpting, Qinmu could see the natural and unforced works of gods, making him see a splendid and magnificent divine art in his days. It seems one can comprehend many techniques looking at these stone statues. Qinmu exclaimed in admiration as a middle-aged man suddenly walked over, smiling. The youth from the countryside, do you want to earn money? I have a great deal for you. The city lord's manor is looking for people to have an arena fight. If you win, you'll get 100 dragon coins. Qinmu shook his head. The middle-aged man went to search for other people and found a youth who went into the city lord's manor excitedly. An arena fight in City Lord's Manor? What is the Border Dragon City Lord planning? Qinmu was puzzled. At this moment, a voice laughed loudly. Ever since Heavenly Devil Cult Master Li Tianqing had died, Cult Mistress had always been elusive and vanished without a trace. Never would I expect the Mistress to actually visit my Border Dragon City. For Mistress to come from afar, your presence brings light to my humble dwelling. His voice was extremely loud, proving that his cultivation was extremely dense. Qinmu's eardrums rang from the vibration, and even many passers-by fainted from the vibration. Qinmu was astonished. Cult Mistress? Could it be Granny? City Lord is too modest. An extremely pleasant voice sounded out which was incomparably alluring. When Qinmu heard this voice, he felt his throat becoming dry as if countless of devils in his heart had jumped out and started dancing around. Many people on the street suddenly started dancing around as if they were drunk. They were laughing loudly and had a crazed look on their warped face. Only after some time did these people regain their senses and looked at one another, not knowing what had just happened. A deluge of heavenly flowers fell from the sky, being exceptionally beautiful. Among the diverse petals, a beautiful woman descended from the sky while stepping on the flowers. The petals fell and withered, giving off a tinkling sound as one of them fell in front of Qin-mu. He stretched his hand out, but the petal melted away like a snowflake. Transformed from vital qi, Qin-mu was stunned for a while when he saw the appearance of the beautiful woman. His heart suddenly started to pound furiously. Learning painting and calligraphy from Def, he knew Def had an incomparable brushwork that could draw all the beauty in the world. However, even with Def's brush skills, he was afraid that Def would have difficulty drawing out the appearance and distinct style of the beautiful woman. Looking at her, Qin-mu finally understood what it meant to be incomparably beautiful. An ancient poetic essay that Def taught him subconsciously came up in his mind. Her actions were as dim as the moon mantled in filmy clouds and as restless as snow whirled by the driving wind. She struck a balance between plump and frail. The tall and short of her were justly proportioned. Her shoulders were shaped as if by carving and waist narrow as though bound by white cords. Around her slim throat and curving neck, the pale flesh was open to view. There were no scented ointments overlaying it and no coat of leaden powder applied. With her cloud-bank coiffure rising steeply and long eyebrows delicately arched, her red lips shed their light abroad, her white teeth gleaming within, her bright eyes skillful at glancing, and her dimples were round off the base of the cheek. Her rare form was wonderfully enchanting, her manner quiet, her pose demure. With her gentle heart and broad mind, she was graceful with every word she spoke. Her robe was strange with an appearance that was seldom seen. Her face and figure lived up to her paintings. Wrapped in the soft rustle of silken garments, she decked herself with flowery earrings of jasper and jade. Gold and jade hairpins adorned her head, and strings of bright pearls made her body shine. She walked with slippers fashioned for distant wandering, with airy trains of the mist like gauze in tow. It seemed that only this ancient poetic essay was able to describe her looks and bearing. This woman was too beautiful to be a mortal creation. One would never be able to draw such beauty with a brush, much less catch her magnificent style. Was she really Granny C? Could it be that Granny killed a beautiful woman and wore her skin? Qin-mu shivered uncontrollably as he thought of something bad. Hey, the one that herds cows. Suddenly, a girl's voice came from the back. Qin-mu turned around to look, but he didn't see anyone. Raising his head up, he saw a girl sitting on the temple's eaves. Her dress went all the way to her ankles, revealed spotlessly white skin that was very exquisite. Her feet almost dangled onto Qin-mu's head, her toes playfully curled up and down as she swung her legs. The girl's eyes curved like a crescent moon as she said, "The one that herds cows, come up. You can see further and clearer up here." Qin-mu leaped onto the temple's eaves and sat down beside her. He felt a familiar fragrance on the girl's body and was bewildered. Two beautiful locks of hair were combed nicely and were resting on her cheeks, shaping her face to look like a sunflower seed. Her bright eyes and white teeth became crescent moons whenever she smiled. She then giggled, "Am I chubby?" Qin-mu nodded his head and replied honestly, "The hair combed at the sides of your face is to make your face look thinner. However, if you part the hair, you'll still look chubby." The girl kicked him with her leg resentfully. Her shoes had been taken off and were placed beside her. Bare feet, she grumbled angrily, "My chubby face is by nature. I can't do anything about that." Both of them dangled their legs under the temple's eaves as Qin-mu used his hands to support him. Qin-mu was bewildered as he kept having the feeling that the girl beside him looked familiar. Her emitted fragrance was even more familiar. In front of them was the city lord's manor. The gate suddenly opened wide as 100 people walked out grandiosely. The atmosphere of every one of them was exceptionally powerful. They each had an imposing and impressive appearance that was out of the ordinary. They were all outstanding divine arts practitioners of Border Dragon City with great prestige. The man leading them was tall and sturdy. He had the eyes of a tiger and waist of a bear. He moved like a dragon and his footsteps were like a tiger. He had a grandeur that made hearts palpitate and his mustache exploded to the sides. He may not be handsome, but he was very manly. The image of a demon god appeared behind his back. That was an 8-armed god who was holding 8 kinds of weapons. It should be a vital chi apparition with an extraordinary bearing. Ever since Cult Mistress had stolen the Devil Bible, great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures from Heavenly Devil Cult and escaped from Heavenly Devil Cult's Sacred Elders and Sacred Patriarch Chase, you had entered Great Ruins and vanished without a trace. Border Dragon City Lord laughed heartily. I was worrying over the mistress's safety day and night, and never would I have guessed that the mistress is still safe and sound. This really makes me relieved. I guess mistress must have been studying the great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures thoroughly after going into seclusion for 40 years. Now that you have come out from seclusion, you shouldn't be afraid of Heavenly Devil Cult's elders or their patriarch, am I right? Heavenly Devil Cult Mistress had a cheerful talk with Border Dragon City Lord, as if they were old friends. Border Dragon City Lord didn't dare to go close to her and invited, Mistress, coincidentally my humble home is currently holding a banquet to entertain my honored guest. I've heard of Mistress' arrival and we are honored by your presence. I also can't let my honored guest wait for too long, so why don't Mistress come into my humble home and we can all have a chat? The beautiful woman gave a gentle laugh. That's fine with me. I am also interested to see who City Lord's honorable guests are. Pardon me for disturbing. Mistress must be joking. Please come in. That's the Border Dragon City Lord's 8-fold Heavenly God technique. The girl whispered beside Qin Mu. It was said that Border Dragon City Lord, Fu Yundi, had cultivated to the life and death realm. He had successfully managed to break the wall of the life and death divine treasure, and is one of the rare experts of Great Ruins. Qin Mu looked at Border Dragon City Lord, Fu Yundi. Fu Yundi's 8-fold Heavenly God technique was indeed extraordinary. If he executed it, the Heavenly God will definitely have 8 faces and be able to see all the things around him. He will also be able to attack all the enemies around him. Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration, it's indeed a powerful technique. The girl asked with interest, you, who herds cows, are also very powerful. What technique are you cultivating? Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique. Qin Mu said, my name's Qin Mu, what's yours? The girl curled the hair around her ear and smiled. My name's Yushio. Qin Mu asked, Yushio from Elegant and Graceful Asterisk? The girl was astonished. How do you know my surname is Ling? Ling Yushio? That's a nice name. Qin Mu praised and continued, if your face was slightly thinner, you would fit your name perfectly. Ling Yushio gave him another kick resentfully and put on her shoes before jumping down. I'm ignoring you. She landed on the ground and took 2 steps forward before turning her head back bewilderedly. Why aren't you following me? Qin Mu was confused. I thought you said you were ignoring me, so why do I have to follow? Petty. Ling Yushio waved for him to come over and giggled. I have a way to enter the City Lord's Manor. Now the City Lord's Manor is very bustling. Let us go and play. Don't you want to see what the big shots of Great Ruins are doing and talking about? Qin Mu's heart slightly stirred, and he jumped down from the temple's eaves and quickly caught up to her, asking her curiously, how do you enter the City Lord's Manor? We obviously enter with just an honor. Ling Yushio led the way and came to the gate to the City Lord's Manor. There were 4 divine arts practitioners guarding the door who didn't say anything when they walked past and allowed them to enter the manor. Qin Mu was astonished and whispered, Sister, are you the daughter of Border Dragon City Lord? He wishes. Ling Yushio spat. My dad has a bigger influence than him. I can enter and leave this Border Dragon City Lord's Manor at will. Over there in the front is the river suppression floor, where Fu Yundi is hosting the honored guests. Qin Mu looked forward and first, he saw a huge lake with clear bluish ripples. Pearls as big as wicker baskets were placed in the pool, and they gave off a gentle glow that was bouncing off the surface of the lake. There were almost many female servants carrying a lantern and standing on the shore motionlessly, lighting up the entire lake in this manner. River suppression floor was built on the side of the mountain that was beside the lake that was shaped like a goose. Looking from afar, the interior of the building was a dazzling sight as it revealed the feeling of suddenly getting rich in overnight. The Border Dragon City Lord wished more than anything else to paste gold leaves all over river suppression floor, seriously indulging in a life of luxury. In the river suppression floor, a few female dancers were dancing gracefully in the middle of the room, their sleeves fluttering along with their fragrant skirts. With their dance accompanied by music and drum beats, it was a very beautiful sight. In the middle of the lake was a flat square stage that was 300 yards wide. At the bottom, an extremely thick pillar was supporting the stage. In the sky floated a few gloomy lanterns that lit up the entire stage like daylight. Sounds of explosions came from the stage, as two youths were currently sparring. Qin Mu came to a halt and revealed an expression of astonishment. Both of the two youths were very strong and had extraordinary abilities. One of the youth was the one on the street who had been pulled by the middle-aged man with 100 dragon coins to fight the other youth in the arena. He should be a white tiger spirit body, and his white tiger vital chi was in a golden copper state. There were two colors on his body, being a radiant gold and a dark brown ancient copper. When his opponent hit his body, it gave off sonorous sounds similar to the sound made by the copper Buddha when it was moving. A series of sparks could even be seen. Making use of white tiger vital chi to cultivate his body to this extent was considered extremely brilliant. It was no wonder he dared to enter the city lord's manor to fight in the arena. His opponent's age wasn't old neither, and was similar to Qin Mu. Being only 14 to 15 years of age, his attacks were extremely ruthless. He was using 8 swords where each hand held one sword. They weren't his real hands, but were his vital chi. He was using vital chi to control 8 swords at once. Eightfold Heavenly God Technique? Qin Mu asked softly. The Eightfold Heavenly God Technique that the youth executed was different from the Eightfold Heavenly God Technique, which the Border Dragon City Lord, Fu Yundi, had executed. Fu Yundi had already cultivated out his apparition where an Eightfold Heavenly God stood behind him. The youth's Eightfold Heavenly God Technique hasn't reached that level yet, but the method of circulation complemented the method used by Fu Yundi. Ling Yuxiu replied, he's the son of Fu Yundi, called Tingwei. Come to think of it, he is also a pitiful person. He didn't have a mother since young and was brought up single-handedly by Fu Yundi. Kai. 2 of Fu Tingyue's swords stabbed into the eyes of his opponent. The 2 swords then spun forcefully, grinding the eyes of the opponent. His opponent's white tiger vital chi was extremely strong and have cultivated his body like steel. However, he didn't cultivate his eyes yet and let out a wretched scream when he was blinded. Fu Tingwei didn't kill him straight away, nor did he stop there. Instead, he slowly cut the blinded youth, severing his fingers one by one as he gave an expression of excitement. Qin Mu frowned and turned his head towards Ling Yuxiu. He's a pitiful person with no mother? Ling Yuxiu also jumped in shock and immediately pulled his hand to bring him to river suppression floor while smiling. I'm getting hungry. Let's go grab something nice to eat. I'm also a guest here, so I can't bother everyone too much. Holding onto the girl's hand, Qin Mu felt the softness and smoothness of her hands, causing his heart to flutter for a second. However, Fu Tingyue's ruthlessness still made him extremely uncomfortable. Turning back to look at the flat stage on the lake, Fu Tingwei didn't stop, even after cutting off all 10 fingers of his opponent. Instead, he continued to cut the wrist of his opponent, becoming more excited than a wild beast. This is a lunatic. But come to think of it, this young master Fu Tingwei seems to have some connections with me. Qin Mu pondered inside his head. Back when Granny C picked him up from the riverside, she was scared he would die young. Therefore, she infiltrated into Border Dragon City and kidnapped the city lord's mistress who had just given birth. After turning her into a milk cow to nurse Qin Mu, she helped him get over the stage of premature death. The child that the city lord's mistress had given birth to was most likely Fu Tingwei. Qin Mu grew up feeding on his mother's milk, and that's where their connections lie. Qin Mu turned back his head, and there was already no way of survival for the youth on the flat stage. For 100 dragon coins, he came into the city lord's manor to fight in the arena. He naturally had some ability if he dared to come in the first place. However, he didn't expect to lose his life here. The river suppression floor celebrated with songs and dances as Qin Mu followed Ling Yuxiu into the building. He saw dancers dancing inside the buildings, and whenever their fingers glided through the air, it would give off crisp tinkling sounds. It was the sound of their vital qi. Every head raise and every stomp of the feet accompanied the tempo of the music. Qinmu clicked his tongue in wonder after seeing how the dancers could dance gracefully and use vital qi to make beautiful music. At the two sides of the building, there were numerous small tables where many out of the ordinary people sat down for the banquet, having a drinking party. Some were enjoying the song and dance while others were watching the flat stage on the lake enjoying the fight. The situation on the flat stage was very miserable. The copper muscles and iron bone youth was tortured beyond recognition. However, no one in the building stopped his torturer. Ling Yuxiu dragged Qinmu directly to the small tables and sat down naturally without any regards to being an outsider. Sitting inside, River Suppression Floor were strong practitioners from all over the world who were extraordinarily formidable. The sight of the two youths astonished them, but they didn't open their mouths to inquire. In their minds, this jade couple should be the disciples of some expert, taking the chance to come to River Suppression Floor to join in the fun and widen their horizons. On the small table were priceless, unique fruits and delicacies. There were priceless strange beasts that were cooked sumptuously, which were fresh and tender, causing Qinmu's fingers to start moving uncontrollably. Since morning, he had been dragged by Granny C to sell the livestock and goods. Therefore, he hasn't had anything to eat and had long been hungry. Qinmu tasted the food in front of him and his eyes lit up. He felt that even his tongue was going to melt from the deliciousness and couldn't keep his attention off the delicacies. On the other hand, Ling Yuxiu, who said that she was hungry, only ate 2 mouthfuls and placed down her chopsticks, then watched Qinmu gorging himself with great interest. Seated at the small table beside Qinmu was the cult mistress whose beauty stirred the entire city. She also looked interestingly at Qinmu and the young girl beside him. Is she Granny C or not? Qinmu thought to himself. Other than her, there was also another person glancing towards Qinmu from time to time. Qinmu felt his gaze and raised his head to have a look, becoming slightly stunned. The person was wearing an armor and didn't remove it even when attending a banquet. He was the young general, Qin Feiyue, who he had the affinity to meet twice on Surging River. Qin Feiyue is also here? He didn't return to Eternal Peace Empire. Qinmu was astonished and continued to tackle the food in front of him. Ling Yuxiu snickered. That little general keeps looking at you. Does he know you? Qinmu swallowed down the food and gave it some thought before replying, we had the affinity to meet twice. There's also a chubby fatty 7th young master beside him. However, I don't know where he went. Ling Yuxiu got angry and pinched him on his arm. Qinmu didn't know what this girl was angry about and thought to himself, this girl sure is weird. The General Qin Feiyue is also pretty weird. When this girl pinched me, he stopped himself from almost jumping up. The one getting pinched is me and not him, so why is he feeling the pain? Suddenly, an elder spoke. City Lord, is that your son outside? What great skills. I've heard that young Master Tingwei is the strongest martial arts practitioners among the younger generation in Border Dragon City. Now that I've seen it today, he is indeed extraordinary. Fu Yundi smiled. You've praised him too much, Elder Baishan. My son had only learned some coarse techniques, making a fool about himself. That Elder Baishan beamed and replied, that's not true. I've heard that young Master Tingwei is the best out of everyone in the radius of 300 miles. Just last year, young Master Tingwei had fought 352 battles and killed all 352 practitioners that had came from all over. Not a single person was able to escape his grasp. For him to have such battle prowess at this young age, he's surely impressive. Qinmu raised his eyebrows and continued to focus on eating. Fu Yundi immediately smiled. My son had only killed the abandoned people of Great Ruins. If it was people from outside, my son would still show mercy. Elder Baishan smiled. The abandoned people do not lack strong practitioners. Young Master Dongua's skills are indeed impressive. He exclaimed in admiration after he finished speaking. Fu Yundi chuckled. My son is an honest person and never forced others to compete with him. He only invited the abandoned people of Great Ruins to come forth and fight in the arena by promising them money. He can't help it that humans die for riches, just as birds die for food. The abandoned people came continuously to challenge my son, only to all throw their lives away. These 100 dragon coins of my son have yet to be spent. Speaking about this, my son sure knows how to live his life. When he was done, he laughed out loudly. Everyone also started laughing along with him. At this moment, a black-faced elder suddenly stopped smiling and spoke over everyone's laughter with his booming voice. Cult mistress, after studying great educational heavenly devil scriptures for so many years, I'm sure you will open our eyes today, right? The slim black-faced elder in front of Chinmu had a haggard look. His eyes were lifeless and he sat there like a burnt charcoal. However, his voice was extremely loud. Once he had finished, the gaze of everyone in the building focused on Cult Mistress, who was brimming with charm. Chinmu immediately put down his ivory chopsticks and closed his mouth. Still, he couldn't help it but to chew food in his mouth secretly. Swallowing the food into his stomach, the youth hesitated for a moment and couldn't resist picking up the ivory chopsticks again to grab another piece of lungfish meat and quickly stuff it into his mouth. The elder, who was like black charcoal, erupted in anger and stared angrily at Chinmu. Stop eating. The cult mistress beside Chinmu burst out in a laugh, so it was Venerable He. Why is there a need to be angry, Venerable He? City Lord invited us to eat, so why can't he eat? Am I right, City Lord? Fu Yundi coughed and smiled. The distinguished meeting is also a banquet to let everyone here to have a taste of the delicacies here in my border dragon city. It's only natural to let the guests eat to their content. Cult Mistress gave a gentle laugh as she picked up a bright red fruit and placed it in her mouth. She then leisurely cleaned her slender lily-white hands, and with interest, she looked at Chinmu gorging down food. Ling Yuxiao was also very astonished. She totally didn't expect Chinmu to be able to continue eating after what had happened. Not long later, Chinmu was half full. He gave it some thought, then took out a piece of oil paper and the dry rations from inside. He then picked up a few tender and delicious food and wrapped them up carefully. Venerable He, who was like black charcoal, couldn't resist chiding. Little brat, you can't finish them and you still want to take them away? Chinmu replied embarrassingly, my granny, grandpa blind, and I only entered the city today. We only had dry rations on our way here and haven't eaten anything. The food here is very delicious, and since my granny and grandpa blind's teeth aren't good, I want to bring some back for them. Once he had said that, he looked at Cult Mistress again and had a suspicion in his heart. Is she Granny C or not? Wait a minute, isn't the smell of this rouge the same one I bought with Granny C? A gentle expression flashed across Cult Mistress's eyes as she seemed to be moved and smiled. You're a filial boy, I'm liking you more and more. Everyone in the building looked like they were watching a laughing matter as they were filled with pity for Chinmu. Cult Mistress was originally a famous demoness and was most irritated by mumbo-jumbos like filial piety. This little brat is going to die miserably. Venerable He waited for Chinmu to finish packing the food before saying coldly, are you full? Chinmu honestly replied, half full. Venerable He gave a snort in anger. His snort traveled out and rattled all 100 windows of river suppression floor. Chinmu was impressed and exclaimed in admiration, Senior's cultivation sure is vigorous. I'm unable to do that. The veins on Venerable He's forehead twitched as he suppressed his rage and quietly waited for Chinmu to finish eating. Cult Mistress, who was also smiling throughout this whole event, also placed down her ivory chopsticks and stopped eating. Venerable He let out the murky breath he had been holding back in his lungs and said coldly, now everyone is full? Can we talk about business properly? Everyone's gaze in the building turned snow bright and landed on Cult Mistress. One smile from Cult Mistress could charm 100 beings, causing the eyes of everyone in the building to become brighter than before. Venerable He, even if I give the great educational heavenly devil scriptures, do you think you can leave Border Dragon Village alive? I'm afraid the City Lord would be the first to take your life. Furthermore, I doubt the rest would allow you to walk out of Great Ruins alive. Venerable He stood up and the vital chi behind him became extremely black, forming a fiendish four-armed heavenly devil behind his head. To use the vital chi at such a high level and even formed the vital chi to show devil god. This kind of method was no weaker than Fu Yundi's eightfold heavenly god technique. Venerable He swept his gaze on everyone and coldly said, If the holy Bible of heavenly devil cult lands in my hand, it would be mine. Whoever that dares to covet it, aren't you afraid you would be slain by me?" Everyone in the building smiled, but remained silent. Cult Mistress snickered. "There are noble guests from Eternal Peace Empire and experts that are hiding in great ruins. How many of them can you exterminate? This young general must be from Eternal Peace Empire, am I right?" The one she had said was indeed Qin Feiyue as she smiled. "I've long heard that Imperial Preceptor is the #1 man below gods, so his disciples shouldn't be ordinary neither." Qin Feiyue bowed slightly. "Little General is Qin Feiyue. My teacher is indeed Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. However, I'm not here for Cult Mistress, nor I am here for great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Cult Mistress may be the most beautiful woman in the world, and great educational heavenly devil scriptures may be the way to become a god, but Imperial Preceptor doesn't care about that." His tone had a natural arrogance. As the #1 man below gods, Imperial Preceptor doesn't care about any techniques, even if it's the devil cult sacred book which could help one becomes a god. Suddenly a voice sneered, "This is Great Ruins and not Eternal Peace Empire. Who cares what the Imperial Preceptor thinks?" Qin Feiyue gave off a murderous intent and looked towards the source of the voice. The person talking was seated opposite of him and was a burly man with a curly beard. His shirt was half opened as he sat carefreely. He was grabbing food to eat while rubbing the dirt on his belly with another hand. With just a few rubs, he managed to rub out a pitch-black ball and just flicked it somewhere randomly. Qin Feiyue frowned and gave an expression of disgust. Uncivilized people of Great Ruins are simply uncouth. There's no need to get angry with him. When the Imperial Preceptor's great army arrives, any demons or monsters will have to subdue to him. He then took another look at the girl beside Qin Mu and felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Why did 7th Princess go to mingle with the youth from disabled elderly village? Just now, the princess even pinched him and seemed too close to him. If words of this were to spread out, where would the face of the imperial family go?